Welcome, I'm Todd Robbins. September 29th. A number of, evil things happen on this day. Here's just a handful of them. Starting off with something that many people will look upon as a very good thing. In 1789, the U.S. War Department establishes the regular army, a standing army, which is interesting in that the Second Amendment allows for people to bear arms as part of a well-regulated militia. The idea of an amateur army should always be ready for the call to arms. And now, on this day, there was no need for that, and yet people still bear arms today, don't they? Yes, they do. And they don't have anything really productive to do with those arms, do they? No, they don't. So they do bad things. Yes, they do, and it allows me to tell you about them. These awful things that happen throughout history here, especially recent history. But I digress here, because that's what I do. 1853, an immigrant ship, the Annie Jane, sinks off of Scotland, and it kills about 350 people. And there's something inherently so very sad about it. I mean, all passenger ships sinking are a sad thing, and yet this was an immigrant ship. This was a ship that was going somewhere with people who were filled with hope that life would get better for them, and yet it didn't. 1911, Italy declares war on Turkey and starts the Italo-Turkish War. It's one of the lesser-known conflicts. I mean, it was overshadowed a few years later by a thing called World War I. But this was a kind of a serious thing. And it all comes from the fact that Turkey and the Ottoman Empire there had been weakened as of late. And Italy decided to do a land grab and get hold of places like Libya that were under the control of Turkey. And so they did it. They kind of kicked someone while they were down. And it lasted a year. And Italy got a lot out of it. And then what happened was the Balkan states turned around and then declared war on Turkey, and they got stuff out of it later on. But we'll talk about that at another time. Let's talk about 1941 and the massacre at Babi Yar near Kiev. It was not a good day, especially if you were a Jew, because almost 34,000 people were massacred on that day by the Nazis, unarmed people, mostly Jews, because that's what the Nazis did. Let's not forget that, shall we? On this day in 1957, explosion at the Mayak plutonium explosion at the Mayak plutonium production plant in the Soviet Union spreads radiation over 20,000 square miles. Okay, there you go. That's one way of doing it. 1971, a baseball player named Ron Hunt obtains a record. Now, baseball players, for the most part, are trying to get records for runs batted in, runs scored, hits, things like that. Well, Ron Hunt obtained the record for getting hit by a pitch. Being a batter, standing there and getting hit by a pitch. How many times? 50 times in a single season. His 50th and final one of the season happened on this day in 1971. He made a comment. He said, "Some people give their bodies to science. I give mine to baseball." And it wasn't the only time that this happened, this kind of thing. In 1968, he was hit by 25 pitches. 69, that was 68, 25 and 69, 26 and 70, 50 and 71. 26 times he was hit in 72, and 24 times in 73, and 16 times in 1974. You know, it's important to do what you do in life and do it as well as you can and do what you're good at. And this was what he seemed to be good at. 1972, Robert McNamara, who was the former Secretary of Defense and was the guy who really ran the Vietnam War. He was the one who pushed it and made it a thing and kept us involved, often with dubious information and claims as to the winnability of that conflict. He was on a ferry, and an artist, I don't know who it was, but an artist confronted him on his role of what he had done and tried to throw him overboard. It didn't happen. He survived, and there were no charges pressed because, well, Robert McNamara deserved to be thrown overboard. In 1976, Jerry Lee Lewis attempted to shoot, doing some target practice, shooting soda bottles with some members of his band, and hit his bass player, Norman Owens, twice in the chest. And the reason he was doing this is because it was his birthday. It was the killer's birthday. Yes, he was born, when was he born? 1935. So it was on his, what was that, 51st birthday. He was doing a little target practicing, and things went terribly, terribly bad. In 1982, cyanide-laced Tylenol kills 7 people in Chicago. The first report of it coming out was the day before, and then the death toll started up. And it's interesting, in 1985, on this day, was the first of 5 deaths from cyanide-laced Tylenol. It was kind of a copycat, or it might have been the same person. We don't know. No one has ever been charged with the crime. And 1989, the crime of the century happened. Zsa Zsa Gabor, who is kind of forgotten these days. It's very possible that name doesn't ring a bell, but for those of us who grew up during the 60s and 70s, she was a person, she was very much like the Kardashians. I'm not really fond of comparisons, but it is a way of making you understand the dynamic. She was an actress who was most known for being famous And she had a very attractive woman, Hungarian woman, and she had there were 3 sisters, the Gabor sisters, very, very attractive. Magda, Zsa Zsa, and I don't remember who the third one was, but Zsa Zsa was most famous of them, doing such remarkable classic films as The Queen from Outer Space. And she had this thick accent and was on talk shows and game shows and things like that. And on this day, she was convicted. She was in Beverly Hills, and a cop told her not to do something, and she slapped him because she was a badass, Zsa Zsa Gabor. And she had to do the time for the crime. So she had street creds after that. And no record of her getting a prison tattoo. Moving right along, 2017, there were strange sonic attacks. Sounds were used to attack the U.S. Diplomats in Cuba. Diplomats and the staff of the Cuban embassy there. And we had to issue a warning of Americans shouldn't go to Cuba because something was something evil was happening there. And this was another strange day, talking about some birthdays here. For whatever reason, as I'm going through these, I come across birthdays of various military officials in the Civil War. And you would think they would be spread out throughout the year, but every once in a while they cluster up. And though they're on different years, they're on this day. And I find that very curious. Like, for instance, 1829, Bradley Tyler Johnson, who was a brigadier general in the Confederate Army. 1829, also Giles Alexander Smith, who was a major general in the Union Army. 1830, John Parker Hawkins, who was a major general in the Union Army. 1831, John McAllister Schofield, who was also a major general in the Union Army. And it's strange how they all line up, how babies born on this day end up growing up to be generals in the Civil War. I just find it fascinating. I also find it fascinating, a wonderful actor with gravitas who any movie or TV show he's in becomes immediately better because of the fact that he's in it. Ian McShane, who, though he was well known in England and everything, kind of burst on the scene in the United States for his role in Deadwood, playing Al Swearingen, the awful, awful, evil saloon owner, but so likable, so interesting. Ian McShane. Also, he's in the John Wick movies, which is my second favorite set of roles that he plays, where he's running this hotel where the assassins stay. Just charming, just so watchable. And on this day, there's a couple of another sad thing, a death in 1998. Jared High, who was, or was he 13 years old? Yes, 13 years old. No, he's more than that. No, 13 years old, forgive me. For talking to myself here. He was a 13-year-old boy who had been assaulted by a classmate, beaten up. And there were injuries that were not only physical, but mental and emotional. And he committed suicide on this day in 1998. And it started the whole discussion about bullying and the effects, that it's just not, a coming of age kind of thing, that it's dark and sinister, and the real toll it takes, as proven by this young man and so many children after that. And finally, on a lighter note, it is the death of a wonderful man filled with dark whimsy, Charlie Adams, cartoonist, best known for his wonderful illustrations, The Addams Family. And that was later made into a wonderful TV show and also, several movies. Just a twisted sense of humor. That was Charles Adams. Died on this day. He was 76 years old. Well, there you go, and there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did like the video, hit the like button, subscribe to it, hit the notifications so that you can see the next video that comes out, assuming you survive all the evil things that will be happening to you on this day. And if you do survive, I hope to see you back here. And if you don't survive, well, do me a favor if you would. As you're dying, if you have the opportunity as you're dying and you're withering away there, with your last breath, call someone over and say, "Don't worry, I hid the money, and you know where it is." And close your eyes and drift away. Always leave them guessing. That's what I recommend, because I'm Todd Robbins. And in regards to all the things that will be happening to you on this day, well, good luck.